History remembers long, grinding wars, but some are over in a flash. Imagine a war so brief it started after breakfast and ended before lunch, the Anglo-Zanzibar War of 1896. Lasting just 38 minutes, it's the shortest war in history, a display of overwhelming force against desperate defiance. On August 27, 1896, the British Empire prepared to strike Zanzibar, a small island sultanate off East Africa. An ultimatum had been issued. A deadline set for 9 a.m., the British Royal Navy was ready to enforce imperial will, not negotiate. This was no random act of aggression, but the climax of years of British influence and tension over trade, politics, and the fight against slavery. Zanzibar was a valuable hub, rich in spices, ivory, and until recently, the slave trade. Britain's growing control clashed with local autonomy, setting the stage for a showdown. The war's brevity is more than a historical oddity, it's a window into the ruthless mechanics of empire. There was no drawn-out campaign, just a demand, a refusal, and a swift, devastating response. The world was about to witness a conflict remembered not for its scale but for its speed. Why did the world's most powerful empire unleash its navy on a small island? The answer lies in the collision of imperial ambition and local resistance. The 38 minutes of violence were the explosive finale to a much longer story. This is the story of how an empire enforced its will in less than an hour. The clock was ticking, and Zanzibar's fate would be decided before the morning was done. Let's see how it happened. By the late 1800s, the British Empire was at its peak, ruling vast territories with its unmatched navy. Zanzibar, a tropical archipelago, was the commercial heart of East Africa, famous for spices, ivory, and, notoriously, the slave trade. Britain, eager to control trade and end slavery, made Zanzibar a protectorate in 1890, trading with Germany for recognition. The Sultan remained on the throne, but real power rested with the British Consul General. The British installed Hamad bin Thuwaini as Sultan, a compliant ruler who kept the peace by following British directives. This arrangement balanced local tradition with imperial control, but it was fragile. The British dictated policy, pushed for the abolition of slavery, and kept a close grip on the island's affairs. For a time, this uneasy peace held. But it all depended on a sultan willing to play by Britain's rules. When that sultan died, the balance shattered. The stage was set for confrontation. Zanzibar's fate now hung in the balance. On August 25, 1896, Sultan Hamad bin Thuwaini died suddenly, possibly poisoned. His cousin Khalid bin Bargash seized the moment, moving into the palace and declaring himself sultan without British approval. Khalid was proud, defiant, and determined to resist British control. The British saw him as a threat to their authority and anti-slavery efforts. They had another candidate in mind, Hamud bin Muhammad, a ruler they could trust. Khalid's bold move was a direct challenge to British power. He hoped the British would accept his rule to avoid conflict, but the empire would not tolerate defiance. For the British, Khalid's actions were rebellion, not negotiation. The message was clear. The crown's authority must be restored quickly and decisively. There would be no compromise. Khalid's fate, and Zanzibar's, would be decided by force. The countdown to war had begun. Khalid fortified the palace, gathering nearly 3,000 men, a few cannons, and the royal yacht, HHS Glasgow. He believed his show of force would force the British to negotiate. But British consul Basil Cave acted fast, summoning Royal Navy warships to the harbor. Soon, 5 British ships, including the powerful HMS St. George, faced the palace. The contrast was stark modern warships against a wooden palace and outmatched defenders. Cave issued a final ultimatum. Khalid must surrender and lower his flag by 9 a.m. or face bombardment. Khalid refused, convinced the British would not dare attack. As night fell, both sides prepared for the coming storm. British sailors readied their guns. Khalid's men celebrated, unaware of the destruction awaiting them. The city held its breath as the deadline approached. The line was drawn. Surrender or face annihilation. The fate of Zanzibar would be decided in the morning. The world watched as diplomacy gave way to force. The clock ticked down to a moment of destiny. At dawn, the final act would begin. The shortest war in history was about to erupt. August 27, 1896. The British warships aimed their guns at the palace. Khalid's men waited, still hoping the British would not fire. At 9 a.m., the ultimatum expired. The red flag still flew. Rear Admiral Rawson gave the order. At 9, 02, the bombardment began. Shells tore through the palace, turning it into a storm of splinters and fire. Khalid's forces, outgunned and panicked, fired back to no effect. The Sultan's yacht fired on HMS St. George, but was quickly sunk. The palace burned, defenders fled, and chaos reigned. Khalid escaped through a back exit, seeking refuge in the German consulate. By 9:40, the palace was in ruins, the flag shot down. The order to cease fire was given. The war was over. 38 minutes after it began, Zanzibar's resistance was crushed in less than an hour. The world had witnessed the most lopsided war in history. The empire's will had prevailed. In the aftermath, the devastation was clear. The palace was destroyed, the Sultan's yacht sunk, and hundreds of Khalid's men were dead or wounded. British casualties? Just one minor injury. Khalid, now a fugitive, found sanctuary in the German consulate. The British demanded his surrender, but the Germans refused. Weeks later, Khalid was smuggled out to German East Africa, where he lived in exile. The British quickly installed Hamud bin Mohammed as Sultan, a ruler who followed their lead. One of his first acts, the formal abolition of slavery in Zanzibar. The Sultan's power was now ceremonial. Real authority belonged to the British consul. The war's message was unmistakable. Resistance was futile. Zanzibar's independence was gone, replaced by British control. The ruins of the palace stood as a warning to all who might defy the empire. The island's fate was sealed in less than an hour. The Anglo-Zanzibar War is more than a historical oddity. It's a stark lesson in the realities of empire. The conflict exposed the vast gap in power and technology between colonizer and colonized. There was no fair fight, only a brutal assertion of dominance. For Britain, it was a minor incident, quickly forgotten. For Zanzibar, it was a national trauma. The day independence died and the palace burned. The war's brevity only highlights the brutality of the power imbalance. It was a calculated act, meant to send a message. Defiance would be crushed instantly. The legacy of those 38 minutes lingers, a reminder of how empires enforced their will. History is often shaped not by debate, but by sudden, overwhelming force. The guns fell silent before lunch, but their echo remains. The Anglo-Zanzibar War asks us to remember the cost of empire, even when the war is short. In the blink of an eye, a nation's fate was rewritten. The lesson endures. In the age of empire, might made right.